So when President Biden took office, he had two very big plans he wanted to do. He has this Build Back Better plan. This is something that Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, all the Democrats are trying to push. Now inside the Build Back Better plan, he has two things. He has the American Jobs Plan and he has the American Families Plan. Now both of these are trying to get passed into law from Congress, and they're trying to push this through over the course of the next couple of weeks. They have this $1.9 trillion infrastructure bill. That is going to be the jobs plan. That is going to put more money into roads and bridges and things like that. Also, the $3.5 trillion budget plan is going to be the American Families Plan. That is possibly going to be the extension of a lot of the stimulus programs that are going on right now. You have the child tax credit. That is something that every child who's under the age of 17 is getting a monthly check every month. That's on the 15th. If they extend those out, that means it would be a reoccurring payment coming in every month for those that do qualify for that. And that would be part of the American Families Plan in his Build Back Better program. The infrastructure bill will just go straight into those jobs. So if you are in some type of roads, construction, things like that, if you're in the solar industry or the windmills and all that, the climate change type things they're talking about, you want to be more energy efficient. If you're in some of these areas, you're going to benefit from the federal government coming in and spending that money into those different areas. Now, I think personally, the federal government is going to have to stop with all the printing and all the spending. I mean, it's just got absolutely insane as far as the amount of money they're spending. Both Democrats and Republicans, they love to spend money. I mean, the last president, he was a Republican. They spent a ton of money through him. The new president now, he's a Democrat. He's going to be spending a ton of money. So it doesn't matter with both sides. They both love to spend the money. They just have different things they like to spend the money on. It's easy for the federal government to just print that money. They can just the government just print that money, give it to the federal government, and let them go spend on what they want. If Bernie Sanders had his way, he would just write a $50 trillion check and he'd say, let's just put it out there. That is dangerous for the American dollar because it devalues it so much. Now, they did have this debt ceiling where they just raised that up to, I guess they raised it up another $480 billion. They have until December 3rd to try to figure out what they're going to do with the debt. And every year or every few years, they do this back and forth. They go from the debt ceiling and they talk about it and they just put on this kind of whole charades. And then they, at the last second, they raise the debt ceiling because it's the government saying, hey, they're voting for their own jobs in order to continue their jobs. So they're not going to vote against that and have their own jobs closed down. But eventually it's going to catch up to them. And that's why I'm always encouraging people, try to pick up gold and silver if you can. Try to pick up some cryptocurrencies. I like Bitcoin just because of the fact that it's decentralized. It's one of the most decentralized currencies out there. I mean, there's arguments for all the other ones, but for me, it just seems like the safest place to be. Also, there are other places to invest, but for me, I like hard assets. I like the gold and silver. I like the digital currencies that are going right now. There will be some type of stimulus plan that the Federal Reserve might come out with. They're talking about a Fed Now coin where they're going to drop the money into your phone. If they do that, they're going to bypass Congress. They're going to bypass the banks. I'm not sure they're going to be too thrilled about it, but that looks like it could be coming down the road. Right now, they're using banks. They're using checks, old school type things. Digital right now, get money into an app and let people spend it. I don't know if it's going to be good. Who knows? I think personally think that it's going to be good in the short term, but in the long term, it's not going to be good because they're going to put some type of limits on those payments. So for example, they might send you $1,000 and say you have to spend that over the course of the next 2 weeks. If you don't, then we take it back. That's going to create a velocity of money. People are going to spend the money, but it's going to drive inflation through the roof. But that's what they're working on with these two bills right now. Congress is the only organization that can get these new stimulus plans done. They're the ones that have to put the stuff in these bills. Now, I think Nancy Pelosi might sneak in some things into this bill. It's about a huge 4 phone books together to make up this bill. She might pass the 4 stimulus in there, stimulus check inside of this new bill. Now, some of the states, there are a ton of states that are receiving the money. This was part of the American Rescue Plan that Biden signed into law. Now, some of the states are actually taking the money and they're giving it back to the citizens. There's also some of the states are encouraging people to go back to work. Arizona is a good example of that. They're encouraging people that if they go back and get a full-time job, they're going to give them $1,000 to do that. And I think it's $500 for part-time or whatever you get. But they're incentivizing people to go back to work, which is good. I like that plan. The state of California is set up to where they're giving $600 payments to people and then $500. I would like to see more states come out with the incentive to get people back to work, because right now the jobs number just came out today. It was 197,000. That's all they added in September. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. It used to be where they were adding, they'd say the numbers were 700,000 or 800,000 new jobs were added each month. So to see such a low number, it's just too low. And I think that the federal government might want to step aside and let the economy kind of grow itself, and then without them spending the money into the economy. But Tennessee, they're going to be sending a lot of money to teachers. Maryland, some of the other states, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, they're also sending money to the teachers. Now, Florida is sending money to the police officers and firefighters, so they're going to be sending those bonus checks to those organizations. Now, in New York, $2.1 billion is set aside for the workers' fund to be claimed who are eligible for unemployment benefits. And this is something, I think if you make less than a certain amount of money, you are eligible for that money. New York City is giving $5,000 to local artists. I'm not sure why local artists are being singled out there. The taxi cab drivers are also receiving payment, so they're going to be getting money too. So that's good news for people in New York City. I think the homeless is also they're going to try to work on something with the homeless. To me personally, I think the best way for them to get more stimulus out is using people's phones and having the app on the phone, because I think more people have the ability to pick up a smartphone in some way. They might not be able to have cellular service, but they can go someplace and pick up some Wi-Fi, like at a coffee shop. But there's so many people that can't get bank accounts because banks won't let them get in there and get banks. So if the Federal Reserve comes out with some type of stable coin and they give the money to the people directly, that is going to be huge. And I think that's going to have a huge impact on people spending the money. Now, I think long term, it's not going to be good. It's just going to create more inflation, and it's just not going to be good for everybody that uses the dollar right now. Also, speaking of inflation, you have Social Security, SSI. They're trying to push for another $1,400 check to get people in SSI to get another payment. Because what's happening right now is inflation is running so big right now, and it's because they're printing all this money. 11% inflation is happening right now. Now, the Federal Reserve say they have it in control. They don't have it control. It's like 11%. And so they're going to increase the Social Security payments up to 6% increase over the course of the next year is going to go out to the Social Security recipients. But they're trying to push for Congress to say, hey, $1,400 checks, we want to get those out to those in Social Security. So if you do receive Social Security payments, you're going to see a bump in your pay and also possibly another one-time payment. Now, the debt ceiling was raised. If they don't raise the debt ceiling, they have to shut down government. And some might say that's good, some might say that's bad. I think if you get so many people on Social Security and they're dependent on that check, I think the federal government's going to have to, continue to honor those checks. But at some point, they're going to have to tie that back. They're going to have to bring that back and say, we cannot keep supporting so many big groups. They're just not enough, they can't tax enough people to get that revenue in. They have to go and borrow it from the federal government. And when they borrow it from the Federal Reserve just writes those checks, then they can spend it, but they have to keep borrowing. And that's just puts so much pressure on the dollar. You and I, we have to go out there and spend that money at grocery stores and gas stations. And as prices continue to rise, it's because the value of that dollar is declining. That's really what it is. If prices were going down, then that would mean the dollar is actually increasing in value. But it's not working right now. In fact, it's almost negative because of the fact that there is so much inflation. So I always encourage people to try to get that into Bitcoin, try to get in some gold and silver. That will protect your value, that will protect your purchasing power.